All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 on the show. We have Regas McDonald, a duo band made of two cousins, Sam Regas and Matt McDonald. The band's music has been described as kraut rock, psych, baroque pop, and I think it lives up to it. These guys have a very unique sound, and their record takes on like a modernist composer twist to like pop, punk rock. I don't know. It's a really cool record. November 10th. Hall of Fame Cities, the new record comes out on all the streaming platforms. Before we get into listening to a track from the record, this you guys are probably like, well, this isn't a normal Zig at the Gig drop time. This is a different time for the episode to come out, and you're right. This week, or the next coming weeks, the week of November 8th through the 13th, I'm running a benefit called Knitting for the NICU, a benefit for Amy Baker. It's a week-long concert series, in-person and streamed on Facebook Live, featuring 21 acts, and I think there's going to be 7 more live artists, painters to join. I haven't got the confirmation yet, but it's a lot of artists coming together to help one family in need. And my friend Amy from work, and as we get into this conversation, Sam and Matt are both teachers. And a fellow teacher of mine, she had some pregnancy complications and had to induce early labor, and her baby's in the NICU. So we're doing a fundraiser to help her. 90% of everything we raise is going to go to help her. 10% is going to go to help make these things called Hope Hearts. So Amy's a avid crocheter, so we wanted to incorporate her interests as well. So she came up with this pattern for these little hearts, and they're called Hope Hearts. And the idea is one heart stays with the baby in the NICU and the other stays with the parent. So that way, when they can't be there, especially during times like now where COVID and restrictions are put on and you can't be there as much as you want to be, the two can always stay connected. So we're taking 10% of everything we make to get funds or to put towards supplies to make these Hope Hearts. We're also collecting knitted boots, hats, and blankets, crocheted as well. Yeah, and that's all linked below. We're going to be streaming from the 8th till the 13th, and it's going through 5 different venues, and it's also in person too. So if you want to help out, you want to go see a show on a weeknight, it's going to help a family in need. But even if you can just share the event, spreading the word is beyond more helpful than you think. And anything's going to be greatly appreciated, and it's going to go to a family that's in need. So now, with that being said, we're going to get back to our guest. November 10th, Hall of Fame Cities, the new record. We're going to listen to a track off it.
strangers at parties. Oh, wish we were out of that room. He's ripping his nails and he's ripping his hair balding. This time outside it, I mean it's scalding. Oh, and it's always burning his hands. Oh, burning his hands. Would it be that dance? Oh, you should have tied that shoe. But you never wait. You don't take your time. You'd like to dream in Moorish patterns. Take a look at the Western eyes of fine idea. And yet you can't even give good direction.
That's one song, Regas McDonald. November 10th, the whole album comes out on all streaming platforms. Yeah, right? What a trip. There's like 9 different movements in that. Maybe not the exact number, but there's a lot of movements in that. It's really cool stuff, friends. So I highly recommend you check out the album when it comes out. We're going to jump into the conversation, but before we do that, if you can like, rate, subscribe, review the podcast on all the podcast platforms, and maybe follow us on the YouTubes and other social medias, it really helps me keep talking to cool people and sharing those insights with you. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Matt and Sam.
Yeah, it seems cool. And I just saw you had Victor Wooten on. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's sick.
It was super sick. He's someone like that book. Have you read The Music Lesson?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Yeah. I'm definitely like a big fan of Victor Wooten's like approach to music theory and music teaching. So I'm interested.
Definitely, you got to. I read that going into college for music, and it was kind of like the best and worst time to read that book because it's kind of like the mindset thing that gets broken after you do all the discipline. You should do that first, and then break down, then
Yeah.
break down the
You can't-
discipline.
You can't go full Jackson Pollock, while
Well,
you're still
you
coloring.
can too, depending. Sometimes it works out when you can. But so you guys are to jump into it. You guys were and or are both teachers?
Were.
Yeah.
Were. It's funny. We had an interview last week, and that was also the first question. I kind of forgot that was part of our byline. Yeah, I was a graduate instructor last year,
Okay.
and then Matt.
And then I was a Latin teacher at a high school 2 years ago. I've been in law school the last 2 years. And then,
Yeah, and I have a media analyst job, so yeah, we've changed it up a little bit.
That's cool. I teach music at a charter school, which is why I found that interesting. So I was like, oh, okay, we'll
Cool.
just have a teacher's band. Here we go. Kids, let me tell you about
There you
them, all that learning.
Yeah, exactly.
But before
Unionize it. Go.
before getting into that, as it's interesting because I've also interviewed another band that was cousin grown. Now growing up, like musically, let's kind of go one at a time. When did music affect both of you, and when did that become a mode of expression? And then when did the kind of crossing point happen? So let's start with Sam.
Cool. Yeah. So I don't really ever remember it not being, a really huge force in my life. My father is a huge music fan and played guitar in a kind of a cool. They sort of did like rockabilly meets punk, just really cool covers in the Canton area. I would have been about 8 or 9, I think, when he started doing that, and that felt like about the time I started really getting interested in playing guitar, which was probably, about 4th grade or so. And then Matt and I let him take it away here. I feel like pretty much right away, even maybe before we were playing instruments, would like write these little stupid songs, and we were huge like Beatles fans even as kids. So I think it was always a pretty central presence and really a central element of our friendship, our being together.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like my experience goes, the first thing I really remember being into was like being 4 or 5 years old and the Backstreet Boys, and like kind of coming to the like knowledge of like, oh man, there's like the stuff like music that can make you dance and make you groove. And then a couple years after that, like learning about the Beatles kind of took a hold of me in itself. I think like Sam and I kind of both became enamored by the Beatles, or by the time we were like 7 or 8, and really I was fortunate enough to see Paul McCartney like when I was 9 years old, and that kind of really changed my life and said like, this is the direction I want to go. I want to perform music. I want to play bass. I want to make music.
And we said those are the only 2 influences we need, even today, the Beatles and the Backstreet Boys.
We never got past the B's. We were looking through the alphabetical dictionary of bands.
Once you get into the C's, it gets crazy. So,
Exactly.
well, I mean, just looking at what the Beatles did musically, because like what I find interesting about what you guys are doing now, it's not just like it's kind of all over the place. Like when you sent me the demo, I was like, or you sent me the new single, and then I went and listened to the first album. Like it's all over the place, and like in a really cool way. And so I could peg Beatles being an influence, but also I get like a Radiohead vibe. I get like a really unique kind of Jack White kind of approach to the vocals. I don't know. I hear bits of everything in it, and
Sure.
in some kind of like modern composition in it as well. Not as like straightforward because like it blends everything in. It's almost like, at least the first album is almost like one moving piece. So, but that's also very Beatles-esque too. Like the Beatles, like they had a lot of through line compositions in some of their stuff. at least with like why can't Abbey Road
Abbey
and
Road, sure, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's some reoccurring motifs
Uh-huh.
like. But that's a solid. Most people who get into the Beatles for life. I mean, they
Yeah.
stuck right into
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
so it kind of seemed like it struck you individually, and you guys are both doing your own projects, right? Like there was I found it like what was the name of it? The Big Sweet.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to
Yeah.
like dive into musically the Big Sweet or the Rockwell Family Dinner, but I got questions.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So we
Big
yeah,
Sweet,
we were go for it, man.
yeah, Big Sweet was the band we formed really in our freshman year of high school. It was us, one of Sam's friends growing up, Brad Berberry, and then another kid from their town named Drew Watson. That was, our high school band for about 4 or 5 years. Into
Yeah. I think maybe longer even, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years, 6 years maybe even. Yeah.
And that was
and then the next go on, sorry.
No, was it, so when you guys start, how'd that start? Who brought what up? Who was playing what? Like what was some of the kind of building blocks?
Yeah, so go for it, Matt.
Oh, yeah, no. So I started on bass and Sam started on guitar. So we never had that like awkward debate of like who's going to start playing bass.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of bands have. I was always like, I like this instrument. I want to play this instrument. So we've been playing together, and then you can kind of introduce how Brad got involved.
Yeah, and he was on my baseball team at the time, and I don't know, we might have mutually had the realization that we were like 5 foot in 8th grade, and that sports were not going to be our main bag. So he got really good at guitar quickly, and Drew was a phenomenal drummer, which we got really lucky at the time. So we, like I said, I mean, I think even when Matt and I were really pretty young, before we could even play instruments well, I think we always wanted to write, and kind of compose and like talk over song ideas. That always was sort of like the fun part. So I feel like really out of the gate we had a lot of songs, honestly, and the first ones aren't that great. I don't think I would go back and listen to them a whole lot now, but I will say I think we got better as we went, and especially once we started hooking up with Wes McCraw, who still has a studio in Norton, Ohio, Creekside Audio, and he actually mastered this recent record of ours, Hall of Fame Cities. I feel like that's when we really started to explore a lot more ideas, kind of using the studio as an instrument cliche, overdubbing, that kind of thing. I think that's, at least for me, that's always really excited me about music. There are a lot of elements, and I love playing live and stuff, but I feel like that really is my kind of my sweet spot, and that's something I think really also improved our writing then and does now, hopefully.
Now, to kind of stay on that and kind of compare it to now, so pun intended with the sweet spot. Now, like looking at
There
it
you
like
go.
that, do you hear where these songs are going to go, or is it kind of the process of doing it? Because I personally, like, I hear vaguely like ghost notes of the harmonies I want and the instrumentation. I don't exactly know what I want the banjo to do, but I want a banjo in there. And if I'm not going to play it and I have a friend fill in and do it, like I don't exactly know note for note what I want that part to sound like, but I know the pretty much the essence of it being there. So when it comes to like when you're composing using the studio as an instrument to bring these songs to like the next level, or like have that next I don't know, layer of shadowing to bring out the picture, do you hear the whole thing and know exactly what it's supposed to be, or is it kind of experimenting and trying to figure it out?
I mean, I can only speak for I can only speak for myself, but I think it is a blend of the both. I mean, that seems like kind of a cop-out answer. I mean, there's definitely some parts where we'll go in and I'll say like, hey, what if we added, this melody in here and let's use this instrument. But then there are some times where we should have horns in here, so let's do like a horn patch and like play around and see what sounds good and like fill it out as we go.
Yeah, and we were talking about this recently. I think for this record, we did kind of change up the approach a little bit, where there was a lot of firm song ideas going in, and I think that was on the money when you said the last record. I think we did try to make it sort of feel like one piece, and I think we really try to make this one all the more one piece. So there were definitely ideas and signposts about the vibe of how certain sections would blend with one another. I think that's even more apt than songs maybe, but what we did a lot was some improvisational, jamming and trying out 8, 9 kind of keyboard parts, and then really going through it thereafter and, working with the MIDI notes, thinking up, harmonic combinations. And I feel like there was a lot more I guess a methodical element of that, this go around with, there weren't many notes that were left in at the end that were unaccounted for, you know what I mean, for better or for worse. So yeah, I think that's something we definitely switched up a little bit this go around. Maybe in the first record there might have been a little more, just see what gets on tape and leave it there, and Godspeed if it's good. but yeah.
So I was gonna say, just based off the one single, like just the intro, I mean, everything fits really. Like I could tell you thought it out. Like I while I was prepping for everything, I was showing my buddy at work. I'm like, listen to this. It gets huge and this builds back down to the song that it's at, which is really cool, and that's really hard to do. You know what I mean? Especially with how you guys layer like how the MIDI instruments and the real instruments, and it blends. So that aspect of the Beatles, like that, like composition, like that is really present. And now that you say that it's the Beatles, because like when I was listening to this, I was trying to like, are these guys Radiohead guys? Are they, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know, like, because it vibes everywhere. But that makes a lot of sense.
Might even be a little more American Radiohead, Wilco guys. At least I might be, but yeah. I do like Radiohead too.
No, but yeah, I appreciate the way you described that build up. I mean, that's definitely, I think, for that single, for the Vein and Leopard, what we wanted. And I think something we try to go for throughout our record is build up to very massive, loud, bombastic highs, and then cutting into the quieter parts and
right.
Going back and forth, and going between the drastic changes, and also not totally relying on that, go into some more subtle build-ups.
Yeah, one of the tricks that I've always really liked from a production standpoint, like I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't know if you're a big fan of Spoon or not, but I know they do this quite a bit. Is kind of the crescending sort of like note that kind of like builds up and then it cuts a lot. I think that's something that the more we and when I was sort of producing it thereafter, mixing it thereafter, I think that was a trick we really liked, and on that single, it definitely comes up a couple times.
I forget who I was talking to. Spoon's an interesting group, interesting band for sure. But like that build up and that cut off crescendo, it's over. Not even crescendo, it's cut. Oh, Little Hag. Are you hip to those guys? They're out of New Jersey.
No.
Is so awesome. I'm talking with them again on in a bit here, but anywho, that's what got me into Spoon, was they dropped it somewhere, they were into it, so I was like, I gotta hear who Spoon is,
Nice.
But okay, so like going into like learning how to do this, like it's one thing to write your own music, and like have the idea of how to write a song, but taking it to the production level, because you guys are recording this all on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and even though you're sending it out to be mastered, which is the pro move, like especially now with like everything being like, it's one thing, certain things I think are accepted quality wise, but when it comes to like music, you have to be of Spotify streamy standard. It sucks. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But like there's like that level of how's it going to sound through everyone's phone. So like the mastering, sending out to someone to do that, I think is a clutch move. But learning this process, did you guys go to school for music at all, or did you just play it throughout school? And production wise
So
too.
no, yeah, no. All the production is pretty DIY, and the first record we did toward Void and Vistas. This was our second one as Regas McDonald. That was really shooting from the hip, not almost really not knowing how to produce at all, and then making a record anyway. But I think we did learn a lot and try to get a little bit more quote unquote hi-fi this go around, even though it was recorded on our own. But no, I didn't go to school for any music of any kind. I have a sociology graduate degree that I'm not really doing anything with. So that's
Well, you know what I mean, to be able to
But hey.
so much of this angle of this thing you're trying to do is a sociological approach. So knowing the market you're pitching to, and knowing that people are the one thing you can't depend on.
Exactly. Yeah. You're marketing whizzes as a result.
That's stunning, because like how just talking about the composition going into it, and the fact that you're just like learning it as you go. Like I love the DIY, just do it yourself mentality. It's badass, but like the take it to the like complexities that you guys have within your music is surprising to hear, in a good way.
Thank you. Yeah, I think speaking for myself, I think when we were in the studio a lot, even as teens, we didn't really. I don't think we really knew how he was sort of making the magic happen, but we were definitely observant, and I think a lot of that was almost like kind of like osmosis. Like when you get behind the board, you're like, oh yeah, that was kind of what he was doing there, and I think there was a little bit of an instinct that certainly helped.
Yeah, I mean, even just like watching him like from the couch, like sort of do cropping with tracks, or like adjusting levels within like the sound file, like just kind of picking that stuff up, and also things like mic placement and having awareness of background noise. I mean, I think, I mean, we definitely have to credit Wes a lot with like just our like basic insight into like how to record a record. That definitely influenced like our approach in these last two.
Now, like, would he explain stuff, or
Yeah, School of Hard Knocks.
School of Hard Knocks, rocking?
Oh, I'm totally kidding. He yeah, he's the most chill guy on the planet. He was.
Yeah. Like, would he explain as he's doing stuff like, "Oh, I'm moving this. I gotta cut this phase or whatever"? Were you guys literally just like watching it, and then like, we gotta do a thing like that? That's when he made that sound like this type deal.
Mm-hmm. I think we were just bossy, and so.
Yeah, no, we definitely like. We would tell him like the type of sound we would want, and he would explain to us like ways to get that. So that kind of helped. I mean, there's definitely like tricks that way that we've implemented into our records of just his advice of like, oh, if you add like a ton of delay here and then like fuzz it out, you can get this noise, like this ringing.
Like if you had to put it in like a context, like I'm trying to get like the helter skelter sound. Like what's a more specific example of that?
Yeah.
If you can recall.
The one that I'm thinking of that's like most in mind is we did it for what's the first song on Shot of Bliss?
Dress Up Your Mind.
Dress Up Your Mind, and then we. And then we used it for Let Rain Your Sunshine Gun, the first song on our album towards Void and Vistas. But it's like we wanted to get this buzzy, like consistent drone. And like, what you should do is just get a bass, pluck out eighth notes and fuzz it out and add a bunch of chorus.
Yeah, always had to fight a lot on reverb too. So that was our, when we when we had all the control on these records, no one was stopping us. So yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that was like direct advice he gave us on like how to make a specific sound that we pretty much used literally a decade later.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Like I don't know. It's like one of those like removing the veil. Like, oh, that's what the Pixies do with their bass or whatever. I don't know. Like
Sure. Yeah.
or even it's kind of actually that was a random example, but kind of your dynamic flow is very Pixies-esque, loud, quiet, loud type deal, which is dope.
Cool. Yeah, we love the Pixies.
That's sick. Me too. They're one of my favorite bands. But with that, like the shit, what was I gonna say about that? Because like it's interesting. Like, did that kind of inform later, like at least with this next record? Did that inform like how you wrote the songs that you're about to record with that kind of in mind, or like after learning some of these tricks of the trade, or did it not matter? We're just gonna write what we're gonna write and make it sound how we need to sound when we track it.
I think for this one, and as we've recorded more, we've probably been more open to the idea of, we have a general concept of the song and of course lyrics and, all that sort of thing. But I think more open to like, we don't necessarily know what instruments are going to be in this part, or we don't even know if there should be instruments per se. Maybe it's sound, maybe it's noise, maybe it's, static, what have you. So I think being able to trust ourselves a little bit more in the studio, or just almost like, maybe this will be a trumpet part, maybe this will be a cello part, maybe this will, be a sampled part. We'll use a tape loop or whatever. But I think as we've gone, we've increasingly tried to get out of our comfort zone a little bit. And I credit all those experiences with helping it for sure.
And I think on top of that too, and this is something that I think is a benefit of when you're recording yourself and not relying on other people and using other people's time, is like, you're not afraid to leave things on the cutting room floor.
For sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
If they don't work, you can try whatever you want, see if it works. If it doesn't, the only person's time you're wasting is yourself. You're not wasting any money in the studio.
Right.
Yeah, that's very freeing, not spending thousands of dollars at a time necessarily.
I totally agree with that. I almost, I don't know, I come from like both perspectives of it. One being that like, it's cool that you guys are like, to have the partner in crime for this type of thing changes the game. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to rely on each other, and not to the level of just like friends, bandmates, but family put together on all that. Like, there's no, wherever Matt goes, Sam, you're gonna find him eventually. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna there's not gonna be the break for that long, or I don't know. There's like this already innate drive to support each other, which I think as time you develop through friendships or through band relationships, enough time in the van that's gonna become your brother, But like,
totally.
To like on the next level of recording, to be able to put up with you trying to nail that harmony for 4 hours, like, I know I personally can't pay my friends nowhere near enough money to put up with me try to track my harmonies, so I have to go to a homie to put up with me. But also, like, I'm kind of because I've been caught in that mindset for a bit, and hearing from both angles of it, and like I get that sense of freedom and that like ability that like you're the ultimate decider of it, But sometimes I get so caught in the like focusing on the tree, not the forest type deal, like tunnel vision. Sometimes having that outside person who doesn't really know what I'm going for, I found kind of benefited in some ways. Have you guys kind of ever run into that? Do you ever reach out to Wes and be like, what do we do? I'm stuck with this. Or do you guys kind of like, I'm looking at Matt, like, but, or do you ever like kind of just figure it, or is it just there with you two? Like,
I mean, I don't think we really go to other people to sort of like frame us or like contain us in any way. I do think we sort of try to self-judiciate, how much we actually do that successfully. Do we ever go too far? Or do ideas that don't work, that's for other people to judge. But
probably should judiciate more, honestly.
yeah, I mean, we do definitely let our sort of wild ideas carry us where they want to go. And we'll maybe pull each other back a bit for some things, but I do think we try to kind of always push ourselves to chase crazy ideas.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, you're totally right. There are like two schools of thought here. Like, one, if you're with strangers or whoever, sometimes that's when I think cool mixtures and mergers can happen that you wouldn't expect. It's unforeseen kind of a thing. So I think a big part of the fact that Matt and I have played so much music together is that I don't think there's much fear or much nervousness about botching a harmony or botching a part, or I think we let the ideas run wild a lot for sure, and I don't think there's a lot of stage fright around each other. That probably just does come with playing music with strangers or even friends. But yeah, I think you're right. There is a closeness that lets you have a little bit more gutsiness, I think.
That makes sense. Well, because you guys would have learned together. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen each other at your worst musically. You know what I mean? Because you've seen where you start, and like I don't know. That's a relation. Like, me and my bass player have been playing together since he's been 12 and I was 15, and taking those risks and hitting the wrong notes, or me pitching a thing and having to be like, dude, you need to change it. That's a horrible impression. But you know what I mean? Like, having that person to kind of like shut you down when you're going crazy is a good thing, or hype it up, But also, like, I feel like you guys have been in it longer than we have. So you mean, like, you just with that family thing. I mean, the album cover I mean, the first record is you two like as babies. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But
we were fucked up in that picture. No.
yeah, you guys were so drunk. I couldn't believe they let those drunk 5-year-olds or whatever on that roller coaster thing.
At the St. Harlumbus Greek Festival in 1998 or whatever.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, you're right on the money.
So when it comes to like writing music, do you have a practice that do you like as opposed to like a band practice, a personal practice? Like, are you writing every day for a little bit? Are you writing just when inspiration strikes, or what's your kind of process on that? Like, because I personally have been trying to develop a every other day routine. Just write whatever happens, record it, done. Just stay in that creative flow and try to be actively mining for lyric or musical nuggets. And it's hit or miss. Some weeks are better than not. But do you guys have a creative like kind of outlet practice routine for yourselves?
Nothing that, at least for myself, I don't think that formulaic. I usually like every day make sure to like sit at the piano and just sort of like noodle about with things, like come up with like bit ideas that seem interesting. And if like I have something, I'll record it and like send it to Sam or show it to him like at the next practice.
Yeah, and from this last record, all these songs were written while I was still living in Bloomington, Indiana. So it was a lot of sharing little bits and pieces back and forth, like, hey, I think there might be something to this melody, that kind of thing. And, I think some of the really better stuff on the record, the stuff that excites me the most is a lot of the, that was, lyric that I came up with. And, this was a little like Matt came up with, and this is how it kind of came together. And so there, I don't know if I would want to keep remotely writing and recording, but in a weird way, I think it did kind of let each of us isolate little pockets of ideas. And I think when they came together, it was kind of cool. I think it was kind of unique.
That's cool. I think like that's almost like a, because like that's kind of with at least with my group. That's why I'll write like the verse chorus, whatever, and the parts and bring it, and then have the homies help assemble it, or have like they'll point out like that's not working. We gotta move this or on that do that. You know what I mean? Like really helps fine tune it if you kind of come with a chunk that kind of like a chunk of marble and the homies help scalp, get rid of what you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
I find that personally works really well. But in a group like that, I've never done like what you're doing when you send it to each other. Like, so that's an almost more like every time you do that, if you're passing this thing back and forth or building upon it, like if you send him Sam, if you send Matt an idea, I know I gotta think audially, like for someone, if I start pointing, it doesn't make sense. But if Sam, you send something to Matt and he sends it back, but all like pianoed up or like layered or like there's a bunch of sweet static, which would be a sweet noise band, sweet static.
Sweet static.
Exactly.
That could be if we get teaching jobs again, that'll be our teaching band.
Yeah.
There we go. A bunch of teachers making noise music.
Yeah, it's gonna be the School of Rock sequel no one wants to watch or listen to.
Yeah, it won't star Jack Black. It'll be like the inverse of it. It'll be like
Jack White.
Yeah,
Jack White. It'll be Jack White. But if that'd be a sick movie.
I kind of want to see that movie now.
I'd love to see that movie.
Yeah. Has sort of anger problem.
He doesn't help out the kids. He just makes fun of them or something. Like it's the complete inverse.
Oh yeah.
But let's kind of boil it down. One thing I was interested when it went from Regas to McDonald, just the last names. Like, at what point did you guys just like say whatever? We're just using the names at this point.
That was. I mean, I think we had recorded pretty much the full record towards Wedding This Says, and we're trying to figure out what our name would be, and we're tossing around some ideas like, I don't know, saying like we are cousins in like a different language or something like that.
Yeah.
But nothing like really sounded that great, and I think we just said, at this point, we're not trying to be anything other than like, this is who we are and this is music we want to release. So let's just call it Regas McDonald.
Like, who's the songwriting duo, Matt, in the 50s? Was it Lieber and Stoller? Is that Lieber Stoller? Like wrote all like.
I always wonder if it's like a lack of like, there's nothing. It kind of sounds like it was that a little bit. There's nothing that sounds good. Might as well just stick with who we are, like. So like when it comes to like doing.
Yeah. The Latin thing, wasn't doing it.
Yeah, like when it comes to Latin things interesting. I got teaching Latin. Kind of dive into that. Well, on the concept of kind of like going in some Victor Wootenisms, like when you pick up that book, I think being a language teacher, you're going to see a lot of similarities with probably your own like mental processes for being able to explain things, because like he approached, and it sounds like you've kind of dove into some Wootenisms already. But like the idea of music being a language and being able to express it and convey yourself like that, have you found through teaching language that was there any bits that help you learn music?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't say, I don't want to say no entirely. I think because it is like a similar linguistic pursuit. I mean, obviously, like the way that you're listening to communicate in music, I think is a lot different than in language. But I think at least like what I would say is that like a knowledge of language and like studying language and like knowing that like grammar is kind of like constructed plays a lot into like your interest in like music. Like I think Victor Wooten, the go-to Wootenisms, he has that great quote that like any wrong note is just one note away from a correct note. so I mean, like, I think a similar approach between like language and music is that in that same aspect that like awareness that there's sort of a bit of artificialness and that any sort of error you make can easily be rectified with just a little shift.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm picking up like, or even like the idea of like grammar supplying like some type of parameter of what you're being said should be said in these. Like you can't have a run-on sentence, you know, if you don't put a comma for you or and but or whatever you mean, like some grammatical like corrections there. It doesn't make sense what you're trying to convey, and like so that kind of puts this structure. So what you're being conveyed is more clear, but also there's kind of like this structure like that gives that brain that like there's the canvas, that's what I'm looking at type deal. Like
Yeah.
grammatically, is there like do you find like kind of like learning grammar in other languages and finding that kind of structure and context for a thing like makes there's almost comfort with like context and structure, like your brain knows what it's looking at, how to analyze it, what exact where it's at, like I've never really studied another language other than a little bit of sign language, but like being able to like understand the context and structure like of something like music where you really analyze like here's where it moves to the next piece, here's the whole thing as a concept, like with like a little bit of language knowledge under the belt, did that like kind of help, or is it just like an interesting thought?
No, I think it's an interesting thought. I don't know if I'd go like that far into like being aware of structures, but I do think like to your point, like you mentioned like run-on sentences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're taught grammatically that they're inappropriate. And there's some like, 9 times out of 10, someone uses a run-on sentence, it just sounds awkward and clunky.
Right.
But, there are times where breaking those rules and, has a good effect that you want to try to communicate. And I think in that sense, like that awareness that like these rules and systems, like they may help with a certain flow. If you're looking musically, right, you have your scales and stuff. That's kind of like a grammatical set. It's kind of a bad analogy, but similar enough. But
yeah,
our music, we're trying to make it sound like Finnegan's Wake, where there's just no grammar at all, and it's just
yeah, I think that's an apt analogy.
So that's what you guys meant by the burns on the first record.
Exactly.
But okay, I was kind of picking up what you're stepping in, like the kind of there's a limitation of what you're using, so that kind of forces that creativity, but also supplies that like comfort within that structure because it's limited in the sense of what you can do. And then, I mean, not limited in the sense of it's a limited recording or not spaced or, clunky to other people's perspectives, but like the idea that like there's only so many colors to put on this painting. Even you could Pollock it to quote ourselves from the beginning, but still it's only the paints that you have around. So like, I don't know. It's just interesting because I'd like, I think like the idea of like, even just how you pointed out, like, saying like when you read a sentence out loud to check your grammar, right, or check what you wrote edit yourself, like musically you kind of already do that. Like there's the context of the progression, and your melody's either gonna fit that context, doesn't matter what meter you're in, you know what I mean, like, or it won't. And sometimes that's great because if it doesn't stick in, it sticks out and it's heard louder for being wrong, but it's not, I don't know, like, but I never thought of it before, like, with the idea of like, kind of editing yourself and reading out loud, like you said, with a run-on sentence always sounding wrong. So we kind of auto-correct ourselves to make it sound right when we're communicating, and like, but in the context of writing, sometimes that doesn't happen. But musically, I think it does because like it wouldn't sound right when you tracked it, at least to you, But anyway, about the burns. Can you explain me the burns?
So the censor burns that you're talking about?
The censor burns, yes, on the first record.
There you go.
The first couple of tracks.
Yeah, if you're talking about Mr. Burns.
No, I meant the sideburns.
Yeah, I got you. Exactly. Yeah, what I'm trying to think how we had a loose. It's funny because neither of us are really, especially religious exactly, but there, I think maybe some of the stuff I was reading at the time, some of the imagery, and certainly a lot of the rituals, the concept there of like a thurible kind of a thing. It felt kind of, intense, cool, and I don't know, the music I felt crackly because it was recorded like shit. So I think the burning concept, the fire thing. I think at the time I had like a I don't even know what it was called, but it was like a Zen Buddhist kind of bell that we were sort of hitting in the beginning of that song.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely heard that.
Yeah. So yeah. So it was it sort of all felt thematically linked. Yeah.
I think we kind of wanted something that was, like Sam said, intense, kind of monastic feeling, ritualistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my pitch at the time was like if St. Augustine was on uppers or something. Maybe this would be the the musical equation of that.
That's awesome. Is there kind of finding like, I don't know, I'm fascinated with like random string instruments, like any weird, like an uru or like a balalaika or any of these
Hell
weird
yeah.
bouzouki, just weird stringed instruments that like there's no real difference to the approach of playing it, but there's a different tuning and tone that comes from
Mhm.
it. So when you're kind of compiling and is there's like bits that stick out, like you're like, oh, this Buddha bell's gonna be dope, or like whatever. Is there like a certain type of instrument that appeals to you?
I'll answer off
Like random weird
the
things.
bouzouki talk.
Yeah. All right. You play bouzouki?
Yeah.
No way.
I don't. It would make my Greek grandfather very proud if I did. But we do sample or use MIDI kind of impersonations of a lot of those instruments. I do really like the octave approach. Like I know, like for instance, a lot of the stuff that I think sounds so cool on like those old Phil Spector records, and there's a lot of those pianos that are like 4 octaves layered on each other.
Right.
That's basically what a bouzouki is doing. It's what a 12-string guitar is doing, or anything like that. So I think there's a droniness there. It's sort of, I think, hypnotic. But yeah, definitely the 12-string bouzouki kind of multiple string octaves on top of each other. That's definitely like, not even a guilty pleasure. There's no guilt involved. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to build a wall of sound when you're just doubling every note you play.
Right. Well, that makes, because like anything else kind of implies something else. If it's not just kind of layered octavely or like even fourth, but fifths are, I think, all right. Like as far as like implying a tonality or like a more than just like a kind of drone. Like anything else, I feel like adds that major minor thing, which is going to kind of affect the whole complexion of what comes after. So like that's interesting. Okay, because like I don't know, like I kind of got Velvet Underground too with the like droniness and like the I don't know if you guys dig into that, like, but
oh yeah,
totally,
yeah,
very big, yeah. I mean, I would say, Velvet Underground, obviously Lou Reed, and then really John Cale's, especially Paris 1919, is probably one of our biggest influences as far as like records.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah.
Chelsea Girl, I would say that's a record I love. Yeah, especially those. They're the best, man. I think they're so cool in the sense of like, this is nothing original, but I think they get a lot of love for their weirdness and their aggressiveness, and that's like also definitely an influence. But especially like Paris 1919, Chelsea Girl, a lot of Lou Reed stuff is like also the prettiness of it too. Like like Femme Fatale is a totally gorgeous song. Sunday Morning.
Yeah. Right.
All those songs.
Wives, yeah. the second Velvet Underground, I think is really like the kind of quiet, almost dreamy like songs are the highlight of a lot of their catalog.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think definitely like I mean they're one of those bands that's so great because they have so many different things that make them great. You know, all the things we just said, but then also, you know, like Sister Ray, it's just like one chord progression that just completely falls apart by the end. And they're the goats. They're the best.
That's awesome. No, like I agree with that. And like what's interesting is they kind of have like modernist composers like John, what's his name? Cale? John Cale?
John Cage. John
No, not John Cage,
yeah.
but in Velvet Underground, John
Oh,
Cale.
John Cale, yeah.
Yeah. He like
John Cale was very influenced by John Cage, though. It is a strange, yeah.
Yeah, he like studied under the modernist like kind of composition approaches and had his own like a really interesting stuff. So like, but you know, like, and I know maybe I'm sure like a lot of interviews like I mean there are a lot of interviews where people are trying to, it seems like trying to tag a band to a thing they know so they feel comfortable about liking this thing. But I think it's really cool to like kind of wear your influences on your sleeve. Like we wear band shirts, we show who we like, and like there's no one's out like Nirvana, you know, and they're like, why do you like that? You know, maybe there's some people, but like, you know, there's this kind of like, yeah, I like this. This is what I'm into. This is part of me. Like physically, I'm wearing a shirt with a band on it. This is physically part of me. And I think musically, it's the same. But a lot of times, like bands kind of shy away from that and don't really want to kind of like talk about who they're influenced by, and like kind of want to come off like, not that I'm saying I got this impression from you guys at all, but you like don't want to share their influences as much. But I also think it's important that if you dig someone and they've moved you to make music in any way, you kind of got to share that and celebrate that. So whoever's into you dives into them as well, and like it keeps that thing going, as well as being yourself. And like I'm not putting that on any of you guys, but so that's why I got all excited. I'm like, oh, the Velvet Underground. I don't mean to just keep throwing things I hear out of you guys, but I'm also like keep remembering what I wrote down, you know.
Oh yeah, no, I mean we'll talk about the Velvet Underground all day. Like,
yeah, they got a great. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I mean, I think to your point, I do think we try to like wear influences on our sleeve a lot. I think there's definitely a few very significant artists like between Velvet, Beatles, we mentioned, throw in Brian Eno in there that like we will mention a lot because in a lot of ways we hope that what we're doing is an obvious continuation of like some sort of like musical growth. I mean,
right.
I think, you know, Sam's a sociologist, I study classics. I think we both have like an awareness of like the importance of like growth of culture and leaning into that, you know, the continuation of pursuit of art.
Yeah, totally. And they're, you know, it's like the old, there's nothing new under the sun. I don't think the point of it is to try to like, you know, like no one's going to come up with music that just came out of the ether. Like it's going to come from something, right? You know, and yeah, and like I said, I think a lot of those bands or artists Matt named, there's so many things and phases about them that, you know, they evolved and they really changed. And I think that's, you know, that's the best inspiration. You want to keep doing something different because, you know, other people have done it before and they've done it great. So.
Right. Well, also, you know, I guess like compare it to language, kind of like we were talking about before. If you made up your own language, no one would want to hear you talk because they have no clue what you're saying.
Totally.
Like,
that's a good analogy. I like that. Yeah.
Like, you need to at least have some level ground.
Though maybe Tolkien would disagree with you.
Right. But well, he wrote it in English. At least a good chunk of it. Like, he built the story around it. That shit is fascinating. Like diving into Tolkien's world. Like a buddy of mine, they're really into like this. There's this Tolkien podcast, and like they go through what's the book that kind of just has his whole realm written out. It's neither. Are you reading?
I'm actually not very familiar with Tolkien, to be honest.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. The Emperor Returns. Like I'm not like I've read The Hobbit and know the Lord of the Rings, but my buddy was running me through this, and I'm like, that's bonkers to think that someone can come up with that whole thing so detailed. Like, I wish I had that amount of attention and focus on anything ever. So when this comes to like a live setting, what are some like kind of, because it is such a layered heavy music and textured based, and I know live it's never going to be that. It's always going to be what you're going to get live, and that makes that experience important. But when it comes to doing it live or performing live, is there things that have informed what went down on wax, what was recorded, or working through performing, did you find like a way to better portray it without certain things? Has that been a factor, or is this just kind of like a record project? I know I gave you like one question with like an A, B, C, and D answer, and you can say E all above, and that's fine.
So I would say our inability to play it live has definitely not stopped us from putting it on wax. And now we're ruining the results of that. But no, yeah, a lot of it is just really hard to do live, or, we essentially can't do it live. But I think in the last few months, we've really started committing ourselves to, okay, how are we going to actually do this with just two guys live? And I think that was always, the assumption that it would still be a duo thing. And, to speak of influence, I think one of the biggest ones for Matt and me both is kind of that wave of, krautrock, as they'd call it in like the 70s. But a lot of that sort of hanging on a drone, hanging on a same beat. And I think some of the stuff on the record, or on the first record, there's a song called A Season for High Splendor, for instance, that's super loop heavy, super almost just running one note into the ground. That's the kind of stuff that I think we've kind of really found a nice application live. That's the stuff that's a little bit more doable than all the trumpets and all the cellos and all these time signature changes, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think trying to do a sort of duo, almost like two like electronic DJs playing like orchestral music. That's kind of our live pitch. And it, I guess we'll see. Our first show is kind of in a couple weeks, so we'll see how it all goes.
Like, so is it loop heavy? Are you guys looping a lot of stuff live, or is it just, or is that just a recording, or is that going to be implemented?
Oh, we're loopy.
Yeah.
Loopy.
We are loopy.
Loopy. Nice.
Yeah. But I think it's a lot of loops that aren't necessarily maybe touchstones of other loop heavy music. Like, I always really dug, not that I have anything against, house music or hip hop. I like a lot of that stuff too, but I think, it's a lot of like looping little like weird worldy sounding instruments, or little bells or little crackles, and almost kind of taking like found sounds and looping those. I think that's definitely something that we've tried to do a lot for the live application. So we'll see how it continues to morph.
Gotcha. First off, where's the gig? Let's plug the gig while we're on the topic of the gig.
Yeah, so it's a private gig, so don't ask us.
Private event. Sorry, homies, if you're listening, don't show up.
If you have to ask, you're already not admitted.
Got him.
No, we're doing a little release party at my house.
Cool.
And it's sort of a first trial. How is this thing going to go live? And then we also did a music video in the past couple months. So we'll air that too. It'll be kind of a house party meets music video screening.
Gotcha.
It should be fun.
Nice. And when's the record come out for everyone listening?
November 10th.
November 10th? So,
And just like the date, if I had to rate this record, it'd be an 11 out of 10.
ba-boom.
It goes to 11.
Are you guys in the no wave?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah? Who do you dig?
Yeah,
I like Lydia Lunch a lot.
Nice.
And then, what's his name? Gary. He's the guy who plays sax. I always forget his band name now. It's like,
that's not coming to.
Because I just did a whole, because you're out of Canton, right?
Cleveland now, but yeah, I'm from Canton.
it's a
originally.
Buzzbin.
Yeah.
They had James Chance and the Contortions. That's what I was thinking.
Nice.
Not Gary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and then like Glenn Branca, that would be no wave for sure. I mean, even
Definitely.
Sonic Youth
Yeah.
to an extent, right?
Well, that'd be like the
Yeah,
next
totally.
gen. You know, that's where.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Lydia
we're,
Lunch was just at in Canton.
Buzzbin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it?
I didn't get a go, which
It was dope. You missed out.
Really?
I'm sorry. Yeah. I did a talk with her a little bit before, and then another one with her guitar player, and so I've been like very no wave mindset lately, and also kind of going off the vibe I got from you guys. That's why I threw that out there. And you dropped Brian Eno, and the Contortions are sweet. Like,
Nice.
that's why I get when I hear them, but they're dope. All right, cool. Well, you know what? I think that's anything else we need to plug here at the end? Anything like the record drops on the 10th of November. There's a show that none of you listening can go to, and that means you, Cody.
especially not Cody.
No, especially not Cody. He's not going to that show.
I would say, basic social media stuff. We're on Twitter, Regas McDonald, Facebook, look us up, and hopefully we'll have live shows that the public is invited to coming up.
Yeah, if you
What's the over-under?
yeah, thank you, man. We really appreciate it.
All right, cool. Nice to meet you guys. Look forward to seeing
Have a
you
good
in
one,
real
man.
life.
Thanks for having us.
Take care, and I'll Sam, I'll send you all this soon.